Hi, friends. It's Hollis here, your host of the Open That Door podcast. I just want to say, if no one has told you today that you are wonderful and extraordinary and worthy and capable and all of the beautiful things about you, I'm here to tell you that. You are. I see you. I feel you. I know you. And I'm grateful that you're here to watch and listen to this podcast episode. So I let my let's see, who did I let know? I guess on social media, I let it be known that I've changed my name. And so I want to give the background to why and what and the whole story, because I think it ties into what I am all about right now, which is the power of permission. So backstory, when I was born, I was given the name Holly Welsh, Holli. Welsh, Welsh. And it was a great name, and I grew up with it. And when I was pretty young, I was pretty aware of my power of creativity and my identity and kind of what I was being called to be and who I was being called to be on earth in this incarnation. And so my name never really fit. And when I turned 18, I had a grandfather who I was very close with. He was a source of safety and security and comfort for me. And I had a stable family growing up, but I had a single parent household, and there was definitely a scarcity there, feeling of the fear of maybe running out of money sometimes, or just like barely having enough or not having enough. And anyways, so my grandfather, 3 days after I turned 18, my grandfather died. And that, aside from like a family pet, that was my first experience with death and of losing someone very close to me. And from that experience, I developed, like from the grief and the sense of kind of life feeling out of control, I developed a fairly minor case of anorexia. Now, I don't want to downplay anorexia because it is a disease that kills many young women and men every year. But for me, it really was a sense of, well, this is something I can manage. And luckily, I went into a day inpatient treatment program. And my wonderful therapist, Debbie DeRazio, who still has a very big imprint on my heart, taught me about this sense of a higher self or a higher power and what we have control over, which is really just ourselves in the moment, and what we don't have a sense of control over, which is our past, our present, and anything else outside of ourselves for the most part. So it was very healing to be in her program and to open up to the sense of there's safety and security in this power within me or around me. And, for some people that's religion. In this case, it really was a higher power. And at the time it worked to kind of put that power outside of myself. But I felt very much in good hands. And I was also a pretty, focused student on math and science. I had thank you. I got a thumbs up from Zoom, but I, decided to heed the calling, the nudges that I was getting to take an acting class, which I did, and it really it was really everything I needed. It opened the door to me being able to express myself in ways that I never had as a kid. I was a pretty shut down kid emotionally, and I was afraid to speak, and when I would try to speak, I would start crying if it was in front of people that I didn't know or a group dynamic, and so I just kind of kept myself small. So when I discovered acting, suddenly I could use my emotions, these big emotions that I had, and I could use my voice and my body to express a story and an idea and bring truth, to the stage or the screen. And I really took to it. And I changed my first name to Hollis. I just added an S onto Holly, and it felt very complete. And that was when I was 18. And then I got into an acting program called the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, which was a very awesome school in Pasadena, California. And when I was talking to the administrator, very nice man, who ran the school, I mentioned that I also wanted to change my name to the maternal, the grandfather that I lost when I was 18, his mother's last name. He was raised by a single mother, similarly to me, and he loved his mother. She was Rosalie Rohrer. And this pretty magnificent woman, my grandfather wasn't close to his father, but was to his mother. And I had a calling to connect with that part of my family and take her last name, Rohrer. And I told the administrator of my school that I wanted to do that, and I let him talk me out of it. He liked Hollis Welsh, and it's a great name. And it's been my name for 51 minus 18 years, 33. And I just kind of accepted defeat, like, oh, I'm not allowed to do that. And then I've, gone through years of acting with this name, and I've continued to be a student of self-development and evolution. And again, I've always known what I've been called to do, but I was not comfortable with that power and was afraid of it, quite honestly. And one of the mechanisms that I developed, one of my limiting beliefs when I was young, was self-doubt. I developed that as kind of a protection mechanism to avoid this very clear path in me and this power that felt too big for me and felt at odds with the environment, that I was growing up in as a child of the late 70s and single parent household, and all of the dynamics that come along with us and are introduced to us and that we grow up inside of. And self-doubt was a really great escape, a really great way to feel like I could manage the moments. Because if I defaulted to self-doubt, then I could say, well, I don't know. I don't have to make a decision. I don't have to stand in my power. I don't have to face conflict. I don't have to be rejected, although that still happened growing up, as it happens to all of us. But I tried to avoid being who I really am. And it got me as far as it could until it didn't anymore. It didn't work anymore. But honestly, that's been a recent release of mine, this realization that self-doubt I've allowed it to overlay on top of my clarity and my power and my ability and my capability. So I opened up a journal just last week from 2019, and it was before the pandemic, and I had written out basically everything that I've returned to this last year in terms of being a new thought leader, coaching, becoming a speaker, hosting a podcast, becoming an author. And one of the things in that book at the beginning was returning to this idea of allowing myself to change my last name to Rohrer. Now, which has just continued to call to me in the 33 years that I've denied it or ignored it. Rohrer, R-O-H-R-E-R. I love the way it sounds, of course, Rohrer, and it sounds loud and powerful in using my voice. But what Rohrer actually means is someone from or amongst the reeds and channels. And I love that. As a young girl, I loved being amongst tall grass and streams and creeks and channels and listening to nature and just being immersed in that environment. It really was my favorite. And so to now connect with this part of my lineage, the Rohrers, and have that name mean what it means is just a double affirmation that this is who I'm being called to be. So we get these identity marks through life, and what's placed upon us sometimes works, and sometimes we grow out of it or it never fits. And what we're faced with is either resignation or acceptance, or if we're itchy enough, creative enough, if we have a drive and a calling in us that doesn't bow easily, we have this dissonance inside of ourselves. And when we really look at the mechanisms behind so much of our identity marks, like a name, words are sounds strung together to come up with a bigger set of sounds that we all agree upon means something in the language that is native to us. And so a name is just a way to identify a person. It's nothing more than that. Of course, we add meaning to everything in our lives. And sometimes we marry somebody else and we take their last name and that means something to us. Or we do it because that's what we're supposed to do, or we like that tradition, or it gives us a chance to become somebody new. And so we borrow the last name of a partner. In my case, I was married to a wonderful man in 2001, and about 10 years after my grandfather died. And he, in his modern feminine way, took my last name. So I continued to be Welsh even through that marriage. And he's now taken the last name of his new wife, which I love. And so all this is to say, I have changed my name to Hollis Rohrer. And it took some nerve and some courage for me to do it, because we do have an idea that we'll be judged and we're doing something wrong and we might be called on it and we might get in trouble, we might get rejected, we might get ridiculed or humiliated, stoned to death, which is an irrational fear. But there's mechanisms at work with us in our unconscious realms that are trying to survive. That's why we develop limiting beliefs like self-doubt or unworthiness in the first place, because they help us manage the moment when we're littler and we don't have enough capacity to say, wait a second, that belongs over there, not here. That's not mine. That belongs to the person who just threw it at me, or the environment, or the tradition, or the expectations of others. So this all comes down to permission. Who are we giving permission to as we live our lives and watch our lives unfold in the way that they unfold and have a say in our lives? The power of permission is everything. When we were little, we had to ask permission to go to the bathroom, to eat when we were hungry, to wear certain things, to hang out with certain people, to watch things on TV, to go out and play or come inside. And permission really ran our lives, and often it was outside of ourselves. We were getting permission from authorities that managed our lives. And at some point, we trade that in for giving ourselves permission, or we don't. And that's tricky. That can be really slippery, because when you step back, and in fact, I invite you to do this week, take time every day, or maybe just one day, give yourself an hour or 30 minutes or 5 minutes to start looking at the different aspects of your life and asking, who is giving me permission to be, do, or have this thing in my life? Who am I giving authority to in these areas of my life that work and maybe that don't work the way that I want them to? If I have a roadblock, or if I'm stuck in any area of my life, that's a really good place to start investigating and just asking, what permissions am I living by, and who granted those permissions to me? Because at the end of the day, we are who we say we are, and we are what we say we are. We determine it. It might be programming that we absorbed from hearing messages or seeing messages, or feelings that we grew up with, and we decided things about ourselves. And they're limiting beliefs and empowering beliefs. But when we go back and say, wait a second, did I give myself permission to actually take on this part of my identity? Or did I just accidentally overlay this on to myself, or intentionally do it at a time when I needed to manage the moment? And maybe now I don't need that part of my identity, or I'm ready to trade it for something else that feels more aligned to me. A last name, a job, a relationship, a way of being, a feeling that you bring forth in your day, an attitude, happiness, love, the capabilities that you're inherently made up of? Do you give yourself permission to be more of who you are today? I hope so. And I'll be coming to you now as Hollis Rohrer, and it doesn't change anything. And yet it allows me to be more of who I have come here to be and experience more of myself in this new identity mark. So here is to giving yourself permission from today on to live the life and the livelihood that calls to you, that speaks to you, to trust those nudges and trust them. They don't have to make sense, but they make sense on a deeper level when they're coming from that higher power or that inner voice, whichever way makes sense to you. It's one and the same. That voice is the same. So I encourage you to adopt the power of permission this week. I'm actively doing it, and I'm here for you. Just know in those moments of doubt, I have your back. Hollis believes in you. Hollis believes that you can shape your life the way that is truly authentic for you. And when we do that, it's actually in service of the majority. Our willingness to live authentically serves everybody in the end. So in celebration of you and what you permit yourself to be, do, and have this week, signing off. Let's open that door to a life and livelihood we love.